Robert Stevenson Smith Baden Powell. I shall begin my presentation with a short excerpt from a speech Baden Powell gave.
My dear brother scouts, I am 80 years old. What do you think of that? But I can't say that I feel very much older than some of you. As a boy, I was a sort of sea scout, and what I learnt then helped me ever afterwards in my life. I became a soldier and did war scouting, and jolly exciting it was. In the army, I learnt service. That is, doing your duty without asking the reason why.
Baden Powell was born February 22nd, 1857. He was the sixth son and eighth child in the family of 10. During school, he was an underperformer due to his love of the outdoors. One summer, he and his older brothers traced the Thames River in London all the way back to its source in a canoe. Then during another summer, they traced the southern coast of England in a yacht. After Powell graduated from his education, he took his Army entrance exam, placing second in the entire United Kingdom. He was commissioned straight out of high school as an officer into the 13th Hussars. Normally, to be admitted as an officer into the 13th Hussars, you would have to go through your officer training. But since Baden Powell scored so well, he was able to skip this step. He was deployed to India in 1876, While there, he learned the skills of scouting, map making, and reconnaissance, and he took to teaching other soldiers these skills later on. And while he was teaching them, he used unorthodox training methods, namely the patrol method, where he divided his soldiers into patrols of 8 to 10 men who would select among themselves a leader. One claim to fame that Baden Powell had was he held a city during a siege in the Boer War for 217 days, with only 1,500 troops against 7,500 Boerish troops. October 14th, 1989, the Boers laid siege to Mafeking in South Africa. Now, Mafeking had no real defensive fortifications or cannons, so Powell had to improvise items to look like cannons, and he was constantly moving his troops to make it appear as if he had many more soldiers than he actually did in his garrison. Now, they had no mines with which to secure their flanks, so he had his men fashion look-alike mines and place them around the city. They were able to make one actual mine out of dynamite, and they set it off to make the Boers believe that they were all real mines that they were planting. When Baden Powell was finally relieved at the siege, he saw that the relief officer was none other than his younger brother. While Baden Powell was serving in the military, he published the book Guides to Scouting. It was intended to be a military service handbook for scouts, but when he was returned to England after his sieges, he found that his book had begun to be used by a great number of young boys for training their own outdoor skills. In 1905, being the Inspector General of the British Cavalry, he was called upon by William Smith, the founder of the Boys' Brigade, to inspect his group, whom used Guide to Scouting as their handbook. But during his inspection, Powell decided that the boys were lacking a certain something: leadership skills. After the inspection, William Smith challenged Baden Powell to come up with a better program for scouting. The following year, Baden Powell wrote Scouting for Boys, and the Boy Scouts were officially founded in 1908. The original goal of the Boy Scouts was to develop good citizens. Now, I'm going to tell you about some of Baden Powell's characteristics that I believe made him a good leader. His first was his love for adventure. Without his love for adventure, Baden Powell would have never joined the military. And without joining the military, he never would have written Guides to Scouting. And without writing this, he'd just maybe be a footnote in history. But his love for adventure wasn't the only good trait he had. He had two other abilities, which are of paramount importance for leaders. He had the ability to listen. While he was training his men, he would often listen to what they thought. And if he thought that it was worthy of an award, he would give them an award shaped like a compass pointing north. This ability to listen is of paramount importance to any good leaders. If you can't listen, you can't lead. His other major ability was the ability to make snap judgments. Snap judgments would be how, when he needed to make the guns, he would need to decide, do I want to make guns or do I want to use them as something else? He had to make this decision very quickly. Now, a third thing is his sense of humor. This really isn't a leadership skill, it's just something that's nice to have. He sent a letter to the Boerish commanders during the siege in Mafeking. The Boers didn't find it as funny as he did, however, when he told them that the continuation of their siege was pointless. I hope you enjoyed my presentation about Robert Baden Powell. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.